Okay there, hi there Facebook, it's Kamal Fernandez here. Hopefully I'm coming out live. Let me just check on my iPad to make sure that I'm coming out live. Ooh, hang on, let's just, let's go here. There we go. Let's just give it a second. Okay, cool, excellent. So I'm coming out live. So, hi everybody, again another second edition of this, of my lives, which is talking about training the dog in front of you, and where better place to do it with these guys. Oh, hey Bubba. So, oh, hello. Thank you those of you that have signed up for Obedience Fanatics or the online course. That's fantastic. I've sent an email out to those on my mailing list. Good boy. Giving you some details of signing up if you're interested. Additionally, there's a couple of other things that I've got coming up, so I'll just get that out of the way before we start. So one is I'm talking a summit which starts on the 20th of March, which is organised by Ness Jones, my friend from Australia, about decoding your canine. So really, really great speakers there. I'm doing a talk on Prey Drive. So if you're interested in that, go to sign up for that. I've shared it on my Facebook page earlier today. That's a free summit. So the information there is from, I think there's about 20 plus speakers on there. I've been talking a lot at summits recently. They're fantastic, really, really great information, really accessible. Some fantastic speakers, and you know they cost you nothing. So if you're interested, sign up for that. Additionally, I am going to be talking on Susan Garrett's podcast, which is going to be the early hours of this morning. So if you're in the UK, you might find it difficult to listen to, but it will be recorded. Another cute puppy. It will be recorded and available after the event, and that's on separation anxiety. So if you go to Susan's YouTube page, Dogs That. Again, I've shared all that stuff on Facebook this morning, so if you're interested, check those out. So lots and lots going on in this very already busy week, which is the Crufts week. So Crufts, if you don't know, if you haven't heard about, is the biggest dog show in the world, and it starts on Thursday, so tomorrow. So the first day of Crufts is tomorrow, and it goes right through to Sunday. And fortunately, I'm really, really proud of my students that are competing on every single day of Crufts in various competitions, from Rallye, the Obedience Championship, Special Pre-Beginners, the Interregional, and there's a couple of other things that they're doing at Crufts, which I'm super, super proud of all of them. So again, if you're interested in signing up for my obedience courses or my online courses, go to kamalfernandez.co.uk and you can find out some more information about that. I'll share that details in the chat after this. But this live is really to talk about training the dog in front of you, which is something that I thought would be really great to share with people. Having had lots of different dogs and lots of different breeds, for me, the key thing to training any dog is to really identify the needs and the traits and the desires of that particular dog. And yesterday, if you didn't get a chance, go back onto my Facebook page and check that out, where I talked about the importance of identifying what you as an individual want. And certainly when it comes to picking puppies, it's really important to be clear about what you're looking for, good boy, from a puppy, whether it be your own needs, your sporting needs, you're being a bit mischievous, your sporting needs, your lifestyle needs, and so forth, which is really, really important to finding the right dog for your personality and for your family's needs. So that's really, really part of the conversation about training the dog in front of you. The second part, before these puppies drop and knock the camera over, come out the way, you two, is looking at reinforcement and rewards and what do you use for your dog training. And that can really differ from dog to dog. So, and that's really, really crucially important that you spend the time identifying what is important to your dog, or what your dog really, really wants. So for me, that's something that often people can underestimate, the importance of building or identifying the things that your dog values. And we, certainly in sports, we get very much hung up on it being food and toys. And often with a lot of dogs, and certainly different breeds of dogs, we need to be a bit more creative about what the dog wants and using it to our advantage. So Funny enough, I just did an online lesson with somebody who has Basenjis. So not a breed of dog that you would associate with, most dog sports, but trying to understand that specific breed and his needs can help you not only deal with any sports challenges that you might counter, but also creating a happier dog. So having owned, let me sit down properly, excuse me, lots of different breeds of dogs of various backgrounds, some rehome dogs, some rescue dogs, some as puppies. For me, the first part of getting any dog is to identify what does that dog really like? What does that dog really want? What does that dog really need? Is it a herding dog? Is it oh, we've got my foot. These guys are biting dogs. Get off. Get off, you get that toy. Here, get that. I should have wore Crocs in this with these puppies. Good. So I should is it a herding breed that needs movement in its interactions, or will look for things that move fast to give it gratification? Is it a dog that likes to have things and bites things and possess things? So a lot of gun dogs will want to have things in their mouth constantly because that's very innately is innate within them. It's the same for breeds like Malinois and German Shepherds. They want to bite things. Is it a dog that likes physical interaction? Is it a dog that doesn't like physical interaction? Some breeds don't like you to be too in their space. So knowing that about your dog can help you train the dog in front of you and really understanding. Oh, it's all going. Knowing what good puppies. Knowing what your dog's desires are and what they like and what they dislike can really, really help you understand them when you want to teach them something. As I said, we get stuck on food and toys. And yes, it's great if you have a dog that, like these guys, is going to hopefully like toys and tugging on things, because that's something that I can certainly use to manipulate and train them. I really like to play with my dogs. I try and cultivate play with all my dogs, irrespective of the breed, because not only is it I feel it's a great resource to train with and to teach them things with, but it's also a great way of building in trust. It's also a great way of teaching them resilience. It's a great way to deal with motion, or to create motion, or to combat motion. So if my dog is really drawn to something that moves fast, I can produce a toy and mimic that movement to try and draw my dog's focus or reinforce my dog. There's so many things that you can do with play, and often we can get stuck on food as a primary way of motivating or reinforcing our dogs. Food is great for dogs to train, and certainly now we use a lot of food, whereas back when I started training dogs, somewhat 30 plus years ago, food was very, very frowned upon. It wasn't the done thing to use food. Certainly in domestic training, it was very much, showing the dog what you want to a degree. A little bit of, quite a lot of compulsion was used. And we gravitated, as you know better, to using food. So when you use food, try and think about the type of food that you use. And further to the type of food, think about how you deliver that food to your dog. And often people can get stuck, before these guys knock the camera over, good, the phone over, we can get stuck on food being delivered in a very monotonous manner or very still to the dog. And you want to be thinking about making your food active, make it interesting. Think about making your food delivery dynamic. So you can amplify or the value of the food if you present it in a way that's interesting. So rather than just giving your dog a treat, throwing it to them, or letting them catch it, or running after you and letting them eat it. All those things can help them build value, or help the food gain value beyond what it originally has held towards you or for your dog. So thinking about that is really, really important. When I train my dogs, I like to use what I would deem high value food, which is things like, sausage, cheese, chicken, steak, anything that the dog really, really would want, so that I can create value for the things that I want them to do. And I can also reinforce them with something that they really, really want and desire. So food and toys are generally things that we use when we train dogs, but often we need to think a bit more creatively. Certainly when we hit those challenging periods of development with adolescent dogs, we want to be thinking of environmental reinforcements and also looking at what does the dog want in that given moment. So My adolescent male dogs, the most reinforcing thing that they want is to go sniffing where all the, the other dogs have peed or made, where the girls have been. That's going to be really high value for them. So I can use that as a reinforcer for behavior that I want. So permission to do things that they want can be a reinforcer for things that I want them to do. So sit will access you going off the lead and running with the other dogs. Coming back and doing a hand touch will allow you to go and sniff and mark a tree, for example. So those things are great ways of using what the dog wants and the motivating factors to get the dog focused on you and engaging in environments that might previously have been challenging. So just a couple of things there about training the dogs in front of you and rewards as being a key part of that process. Certainly when it comes to food and toys, it's worth considering not only play as a medium to build a relationship with your dog, but looking at the way in which you play with your dog. So in previous lives, I've talked about the 10 pressure points of play, things that can ultimately help or hinder your dog's play, and that's covered again extensively on my online course, where I talk about that and I cover that in a lecture. But there's things that you can also consider. How does your dog like to play? Does the dog like to chase? Does the dog like to grab? Does the dog like to thrash around and tug? Does the dog like to parade and carry? Does the dog like to engage with you with the tug? All those things can help you develop the dog's desire for playing with the tug in a way that's going to really make it valuable to the dog. The reason that we want to build value for that tug is when we ask the dog to do things in environments that they might find challenging, we need to find a reinforcer that's going to override the distractions partially and cause the dog to want to, cause the dog to want to focus on us in the presence of things that might be distracting for them. And it's worth looking at your own mechanics when you play with your dog and looking at what does the dog like. So what I like to do with my dogs certainly is observe them with my other dogs and look at how they engage with them. So, my Border Collies love to run after the other Border Collies or other dogs, and that's their real thing. My Malinois likes to have something in her mouth and grab it. That's very typical of her. Same with my Schnauzer. He likes to have something and walk and parade around with it, whereas the Collies generally not as much. To be fair, their mum loves to parade around with something. There's always that exception to the rule. And you want to look at what your dog likes to do naturally, like these guys like to have things in their mouth. Tuck that instead into my hand. And you want to cultivate that to your own gains. Often people will allow their dogs to rehearse those sorts of behaviours away from them or not attached to them in general. Not physically, but certainly as a result of a reinforcement to utilise. And that behaviour or that desire can be then go against you. So for the dog that likes to run a lot, if you allow them to run indiscriminately with your other dogs without putting any contingencies on it, that can often backfire and cause the dog to be more engaging, more wanting to engage with the other dogs, not you. So what I tend to do with my dogs is, again, I put that on a cue so I can harness that desire or that dog's preference, preferential behaviour as a reinforcer for things that I want. And I'm getting attacked by these puppies. So just some things there to consider and about training the dog in front of you. It's worth considering, what does your dog really, really want? Identifying it, what they want naturally, and then stick that in your mouth. And then harnessing that to get what you want. So, careful. So thinking about the type of toy, the way the dog plays. Think about the texture of the toy. Does your dog like soft toys, hard toys? Does it like something like a tennis ball versus a tug like this one, for example? Does the dog like something that it can tear apart and rip to pieces? Or does the dog like to just hold it and carrying it in its mouth? Does the dog like to have something that's harder that they can sink their teeth into? All those things can help you determine what toy, what reinforcement your dog wants, and therefore use that in the appropriate manner. Now, the ideal is that you nurture or cultivate. Do you want to get up on my lap by chance? Oh, good. You cultivate with your puppy or your dog a smorgasbord of reinforcement. So the dog wants tugging, it wants food, it wants chasing, it wants all those things. But not often they don't come hardwired with that, and you have to nurture the different entities of that to get a dog that can play and engage with not only anything, but also you can use a reinforcement in different ways. So for example, if my dog doesn't value chasing something, when I throw things for them, they're not going to have a lot of desire to want to chase it, which can affect things like speed and motion behaviours. If I have a dog that doesn't want to take a toy that's static on the ground, if I haven't taught that to my dog, that can also affect them having desire for things like tracking articles on tracks or scent articles, whether it's an obedience dog or a gun dog, for example, when it's a dummy that's static on the ground. So we want to think about creating that with our dogs and teaching them those skills by using what the dog naturally wants. So if my dog likes to chase something, I can momentarily pause that motion and then make it move so the dog builds intensity for the item when it's still. And that's one of the games that I would play as a foundation entity with my young dogs. So thinking about reinforcement can really help you train the dog in front of you effectively, let me get my lap, and get the best out of them. And also thinking about your individual dog and also the individual breed can give you clues to the best way to approach training them. Having said that, you mustn't get handcuffed to the breed being predisposed to, and you can fill in the blanks. So if I have a Malinois, they're going to automatically like to target. If I have a Border Collie, they're going to automatically like to chase, because that sometimes doesn't necessarily always follow suit. I've had Border Collies that have had no desire to chase things. I've had, and I've known people with Malinois that haven't had a natural target. It's had to be cultivated and built. So it's really important that whilst you can use the dog's genetics as a bit of a heads up to what you might have, you can't necessarily always that's not always 100%. All right, so I'm going to see if there's any questions on my, let's just open my iPad up to see if there's anybody with questions on the topic of reinforcement and training the dog in front of you whilst I snuggle a puppy. Ow, you're biting my toe again. Let's have a look. Okay. Okay. Oh, gosh, dead leg there. Let me just quickly check there's no questions. So, if you have got questions, by all means, post them in the comments. But it's one of the huge parts of training the dog in front of you is certainly identifying what the dog likes to do. And that sometimes can also be the activity. So, you might get a dog with the intention of doing, for example, agility, but you might find that the dog has an aptitude to doing scent work with them. And I always urge people to align yourself with what the dog wants to do naturally, because not only are you going to get more joy out of it, but the dog's going to get more joy out of it. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can't teach the dog to like the things, for example, the dog that is predisposed to doing nose work. You could teach the dog to really love agility, but you could use things like nose work games or search games as a reinforcer for the dog doing agility, so you can also create value that way or create desire that way. But again, it's really important to think about the nurturing, cultivating and creating the dog's desire before you attempt to train them. Often you'll find certainly inexperienced handlers or inexperienced trainers will try and teach a dog a skill, a behaviour or anything before they have a reinforcement or the reward that the dog really, really, really wants. And I always urge people to get the dog wanting the thing first, wanting something first before you attempt to train them. That way, you know that you're going to be at an advantage before you even start. You're going to have something the dog is willing to be focused for, the willing to try for, the willing to be committed for, willing to ignore distractions over, and so forth and so forth. All right? So, just seeing if there's any questions. There's always a delay on this. Oh, hang on a second. Let's have a look. There we go. I have, okay, Lane. Okay, so Elaine Wilson asked, hang on. I have a GSD that loves to have my Border Collie chaser when she has the ball. When this happens, she doesn't listen to me and won't come back. The GSD is only 12 months. So hopefully you can control the border collie, because what I would then do is stop the border collie from moving and use the opportunity for the border collie to run as a reinforcer. So all my dogs naturally will do this at some point, where they will choose running with the other dogs over a recall. And because I've got control of the other dogs, I can stop the other dogs moving, tell my dogs to wait. The the puppy stares at the other dogs, nothing happens. I put my hand in the collar, take the dog away 2 foot, ask the dog again. The dog will probably ignore me, and I repeat that until the dog goes, oh, okay, the quickest way is to come back to me. Obviously, they've learned a recall cue prior to that, or something like a hand touch. When they've responded, I then release my other dogs, which then creates the dog running off, and I repeat that process. Call the dog says no, stop the other dogs, and obviously do this in an environment that you could control if you don't have control of the puppy, certainly, and the older dog. But ideally, you want to put that on cue. Additionally, when my dogs are young, certainly at 12 months old, I would probably curb them running with my other dogs, simply because that's a really crucial part of development. Yeah, they're in adolescence, and it's a bit like kids. They want to go out partying with their mates, and they don't want to be hanging out with their mum and dad at that age. And it's really important that if you allow that to happen very quickly, you can create a focus issue where they value the joy that they get from other dogs over the engagement with you. So I would probably police that a little bit. So definitely allow them to, if it suits you and your lifestyle, that you want them to engage with each other. But I would definitely curb it and have the younger dog engage with me and do the play games with me rather than another dog. Let's have a look. Anybody else got any questions? Oh, hang on. Where's my questions gone? Ugh. Kind of annoying. There we go. Right, let's have a look. Anybody else got any questions? No, my pleasure. Good. I'm glad that I can help. You pup. Anybody watching got any questions? You're more than welcome to ask them. Let's have a slurp of coffee quickly. So I'll give it a minute. Oh, I can reach over and grab my coffee. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, I don't think there's any more questions. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I need to book a one-to-one. Yeah, just reach out to me post-crufts. My Sheltie is amazing. When we get in the ring, he bites me when healing. Okay, so that's a question of understanding, and it could be the environment. So it could be speed, it could be the dog's arousal in that situation, it could be the dog's understanding of heel work. There's so many layers to that you want to unpack. So certainly Fire would have been a dog that wanted to bite me as I run. So I taught her to obviously, I reinforced her a lot for firstly walking by my side and then jogging and then building it up to a run so that she understood that when she was excited that she wasn't to bite. It's really typical of Shelties with motion. They get excited, they want to nip. That's certainly innately within them. So go back to doing, say, slow pace and reinforcing the dog for not biting, and then build it up gradually a little bit quicker, maybe like walk a bit on the spot a bit quicker, and gradually teach the dog that biting doesn't get reinforced, i.e. you don't move forward. So the other thing that I would do is when they bit, I would just stop moving, because the dog is essentially trying to cause you to move. So reward the dog for being by your side, build it up slowly, then increase it. When they nip, stop dead. And stop, count to 10, start again, and repeat that process. But obviously, when you first want to build value for the dog not biting, as opposed to addressing the dog biting, you want to make the alternative behaviour more preferential. Yeah, hopefully that's given you some ideas. But again, what you want to break it down. Is it a handling thing? What you often find with dogs that bark or bite is because they're frustrated with miscommunication. So you want to look at your handling, you want to look at your footwork. Are you giving the dog consistent cues? That can often happen when the dog is misreading information. There's a bit of frustration creeps in, and they have a little cheeky nip to say to you, like, sort yourself out. So that could be another layer to it, and that could be another causation factor. Okay? So anybody else got any questions? Whilst these guys are tiring out. Hey, pup. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions. So as I said, if you do have any questions, by all means post them in this thread, and I can pick them up after this live. If you're interested in signing up for my Obedience Fanatics or Heel Work course, I'm going to post the link there. Sign up. As I said, it's a great group of people. They're incredibly supportive. You get access to me if you're VIP as a coach, where you can post unlimited videos for feedback on your dogs. And there is no, you know, you can post every day, twice a day, and you always get feedback from me, direct, nobody else, or certainly me primarily. And if there's what can often happen in the group, because they're a really supportive community, people can share in that and give you insight into what they've done, etc. But I will always respond to you in that group, so you definitely will have access to me. And obviously the resources on my online training. So there's countless videos on teaching all the exercises for obedience, and there's stuff on mental game, preparation for competition. There's there's stuff for competition prep, mental game, and so forth and so forth. So the Mitzi said, thank you, it's frustrating as he doesn't do it during training but does in the ring. So you'd want to look at his reinforcement history in competition environments. So I'm a great believer in training rounds or training in the ring and replicating that environment to reinforce my dog. And it could be that that's the thing the dog's picking up on, a little bit of frustration through lack of reinforcement. Also look at what you do in training versus in the ring. So can your dog do a complete test in training before they go into competition? That's a huge part of competing preparation, being able to chain, i.e. sequence several behaviours and skills together for one reinforcer. That's a really, really important, critical part that a lot of people miss out. And as a result, the dog learns that there's two pictures at play. One that happens in training and one that happens in competition. So really look at that stuff. All right? Okay, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. As I said, I'll share those details on Facebook. If you have any more questions, by all means, ask. And check out the summit and that live, and there's some more exciting stuff coming out at the end of the month, which I cannot wait to share with people. So really, really looking forward to that. See you guys later. Oh.